The ballroom of the Grand Sapphire Hotel glittered with power, wealth, and ego. A charity gala organized by Nigeria's elite tech billionaire, Damien Okafor, was already trending before the night even began. Cameras flashed from every corner as celebrities, politicians, and business moguls mingled in gowns that cost fortunes. Damien, tall, dark-skinned, with a razor-sharp jawline and a smile that melted hearts, stood center stage. Known for his scandalous affairs, he was charming but deeply feared in business and infamous in tabloids. But this night, under pressure from shareholders and tabloid alike, he was dared live on stage by the event host. If you're serious about leaving the Playboy life, pick someone in this room in 5 minutes. Kiss her. Let the world see who you'd make your wife. Laughter rippled through the crowd. They expected him to choose a top model or a senator's daughter. But as Damien scanned the crowd with a lazy confidence, his eyes paused, not on the elite, but on a woman standing near the back, holding a silver tray of drinks. Her face was flushed, her dress plain. Her name tag read Amara. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for another flute of champagne. In that moment, something flickered in Damien's eyes. Without a word, he descended the stage. The crowd shifted, gasping, murmuring. Cameras swung toward him. Amara froze as he walked straight toward her. Then, suddenly, he dropped the champagne glass in her tray, leaned in and kissed her. The tray fell. Glass shattered on marble. The room exploded into murmurs and gasps. Amara's eyes were wide, her body paralyzed. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't gentle either. It was firm, deep, intentional. His lips tasted of expensive whiskey and danger. The crowd went wild, then silent. When he pulled back, he whispered into her ear, "You'll thank me later." And just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving Amara standing there, heart racing, cheeks burning, with every pair of eyes judging her like a criminal who didn't belong. Amara ran to the back room of the hotel kitchen, her face hot with shame, confusion, and rage. Other staff followed her, whispering, some laughing. One waitress, Stella, snorted. "Nah, so billionaires day kiss their house girl now? Abby's jazz." Amara burst into tears in the pantry, collapsing beside crates of bottled water. Her body trembled. She hadn't asked for this. She'd only taken the hotel job to pay Chibik's school fees. Just a few extra shifts. Just some tips. Not a public kiss from Nigeria's most notorious playboy billionaire. She was supposed to go unnoticed, just a shadow in the background. Outside, the world exploded. Playboy billionaire chooses waitress as bride blazed across gossip blogs. Her photo, lips slightly parted, eyes stunned, went viral. Guests at the gala mocked her openly. She planned this. She must be pregnant already. A single mother as bride material? Some posted the clip online with cruel captions. Meanwhile, Damien brushed off interviews with a smirk. "Sometimes life surprises you," he told the press. His handlers laughed. His friends called it a joke. But for Amara, it was no joke. It was a scar. She tried to resign, but her supervisor begged her to stay. The hotel was trending, and management saw profits. They even offered to triple her pay. Amara refused. She walked home through the dusty streets of Mushin, her head bowed, clutching her sandals in one hand and her bag in the other. Her phone buzzed nonstop, but she didn't check it. Every message, every tag, was a reminder of her disgrace. By the time she reached her small one-room apartment, her 6-year-old son, Chibik, ran into her arms. "Mummy, I saw you on Daddy's phone." Her heart stopped. Her ex-husband, Kunal, was the last person she wanted to see or hear from. She tucked Chibik into bed and locked herself in the bathroom, falling to the floor, sobbing until dawn. Kunal showed up the next morning. Same arrogant smirk, same mocking eyes. He wore a designer shirt and stood beside his shiny new car, arms folded. "So you day-kiss billionaires now? Thought you said I was wicked. Look at you, used and dumped in front of the whole country. It's still me you'll crawl back to." Amara kept her mouth shut. She held Chibik behind her like a shield. "Go away, Kunal," she said coldly. But he chuckled. "You think that man will marry you? A billionaire kissing a broke woman? That was pity. And pity doesn't last." He spat on the ground and drove off, his laughter echoing down the street. Flashbacks haunted Amara all day. Connell had once been her university sweetheart. Handsome, confident, full of promises. But everything changed when she got pregnant. He vanished, first emotionally, then physically. She gave birth alone in a government hospital. He didn't show up for the naming ceremony. Months later, she heard he married the daughter of a commissioner. Since then, every encounter had been filled with mockery. "You're damaged goods. Who will want you with a child?" His words had chipped away at her confidence, year by year, until she stopped hoping for anything better. Until that kiss. The irony was bitter. Now everyone was talking about her again, not because of her suffering, but because of one man's random kiss. She didn't want fame. She didn't want pity. She wanted peace. That night, she sat in bed with Chabik, helping him with homework. He asked, "Mummy, is that man on TV going to be my new daddy?" Her heart sank. No, baby. He was just confused. But even as she said it, her fingers touched her lips, still tingling from the kiss. She hated Damien for what he did. But what scared her more was the small part of her heart that wondered, why did it feel so real? Damien Okafor sat in his glass-walled penthouse, high above the city of Lagos, but his mind was stuck on a girl in a plain black gown with tired eyes and cracked heels. For a man used to owning the attention of the most glamorous women in Africa, this obsession didn't make sense. His assistant, Thomas, brought in files from a new tech merger, but Damien waved them off. "Do you know her name?" he asked, eyes distant. "The girl from the gala?" Thomas hesitated, unsure if his boss was serious. But when Damien repeated the question, voice sharp, he understood it wasn't just a passing curiosity. Damien wasn't asking about a conquest. He was asking about something else, something that unsettled even him. He had kissed a woman he didn't know, but the taste of that moment lingered like a ghost. Not because of her beauty, though she had that quiet kind, but because of the pain he'd seen flicker in her eyes before the kiss. It wasn't excitement. It was fear, defensiveness. And yet, she hadn't moved away. Thomas returned hours later with a file. Her name was Amara Chukwudi, 27, single mother, former accounting student who dropped out during final year. Currently, a part-time waitress and cleaner. Lives in Mushin. No criminal record. No social media presence beyond a dormant Facebook page. Damien stared at the information longer than he should have. Something inside him tightened. A woman like this wasn't part of his world. She wasn't strategic, wealthy, or polished. But maybe that was the problem. Everyone in his life had a motive. This woman looked at him like a curse. And he couldn't get it out of his head. He remembered the way her hand had trembled under the tray, how her lips parted not with desire, but with stunned humiliation. That moment should have faded. But it hadn't. He found himself staring at his phone, wondering if he should call. But what would he say? "Sorry I used you in front of Nigeria." Meanwhile, Amara sat on the floor of her one-room apartment, back pressed to the wall, scrubbing Chabik's school uniform by hand. She hadn't worked since the kiss. Her co-workers kept tagging her in videos, blogs, memes. Some called her a gold digger. Others accused her of seducing the billionaire. Her dignity felt like it was being torn apart piece by piece. Chabik was too young to understand it all, but he sensed her sadness. He kept hugging her more often, asking if she was sick. Amara stared at the walls, wondering what kind of world punished a woman for doing nothing but standing in the wrong place. What right did that man have to drag her into a circus? Even now, the memory of his lips made her chest tighten. But it wasn't desire, it was rage. She would never forgive him for making her a public spectacle. Never. The next morning, Amara heard a knock at her door. She peeked through the curtain and nearly screamed. Damien Okafor, in person, stood on the other side, dressed in a casual white linen shirt, dark sunglasses, and the air of a man who expected the world to move for him. Her heart thudded in panic. She hadn't brushed her hair. She hadn't cleaned. She hadn't emotionally recovered. She opened the door halfway and whispered through clenched teeth, "What do you want?" Damien smiled, as if this were normal. "May I come in?" She scoffed, "No. Say what you have to say and leave." He didn't flinch. He simply reached into his pocket and handed her an envelope. "Compensation," he said. "For the embarrassment. I didn't intend to harm you. I was under pressure." Her hands shook as she took the envelope. She opened it and saw the figure. 5 million Nigerian nairas. Her stomach turned. Amara stared at the money. Her brain screamed yes, rent, school fees, food, a chance to breathe. But another voice screamed louder. "This is blood money." She took the check and threw it at his chest, hard. "So this is what you think I'm worth? One kiss. One moment of shame. One ruined life." Her voice rose with fury. "You humiliated me in front of the entire country, and now you want to sweep it under the rug like one of your side chicks." Damien, clearly unused to rejection, stood stunned for a second. He hadn't expected gratitude, but he hadn't expected fury either. "It wasn't like that," he said softly. "I didn't plan it. You were just different." Amara's eyes flared. "Different? What does that mean? Poor? Used? Broken? Do not romanticize your cruelty." She slammed the door in his face. Damien stood outside for a long while. The street was quiet. A few curious neighbors watched from their windows. One woman whispered to another, "Who's that fine man?" Another said, "Now that billionaire wait kiss her for TV." Damien finally walked away, but something inside him had shifted. That slap of rejection had stung far more than he expected. Not because his ego was bruised, though it was, but because it made him question why he cared so much in the first place. Meanwhile, Amara collapsed on her bed, exhausted from rage. Her son peeked into the room, asking if everything was okay. She forced a smile and said, "Yes, baby. Mummy just needs to rest." But inside, her world was crumbling, and the storm had only just begun. The next few days were brutal. Amara returned to work, only to find herself treated like a pariah. Her co-workers now looked at her with envy or suspicion. Some called her Madam Billionaire. Others whispered behind her back that she'd thrown herself at Damien to trap him. Her manager, seeing the viral video, began treating her like a liability, assigning her the worst shifts, yelling at her in front of others, threatening to fire her if more drama came. Amara swallowed her pride and kept scrubbing tables, taking orders, and pretending not to hear the laughter. She needed the money. Chibik needed to eat. But each shift was like walking through fire. She hated being pitted, hated the rumors, and hated that every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel his lips on hers. Her home life wasn't much better. Her rent was overdue, and her landlady had grown impatient. "I no care whether you kiss Dangote or marry Jesus. If I no see my money, I go throw you and that Pekin outside," she warned. Amara begged for one more week. She cooked with barely enough ingredients, watered down her soup, and tried to make Chibik feel like life was normal. But the cracks were everywhere. Her son asked, "Why don't we have a car like Daddy Cunnell's? Or why does everyone laugh at us on the road?" Amara had no answers. Her heart broke every day. And still, she endured. She couldn't afford to fall apart. She had no one else. But deep inside her, a storm brewed. Every insult, every late rent, every hungry day, and sleepless night had carved strength into her bones. Amara was not the same girl Cunnell abandoned. She was not the same woman Damien kissed. She was a mother, a fighter, and a woman trying to reclaim her dignity in a world that loved to mock the weak. Yet even in all her anger, there was one thing she couldn't shake: Damien. Not the billionaire, not the playboy, but the man who had stared at her not with lust, but with confusion, as if even he didn't understand why she mattered to him. That terrified her most of all. Because what if, just what if, he wasn't playing a game? Cunnell returned, this time not just to mock Amara, but to assert power. On a hot Saturday afternoon, he showed up with his new wife, Ngozi, a flashy woman with a snake-like smile. They pulled up in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, drawing attention from the neighborhood. Chibik was outside playing with other children when Cunnell approached. "My son," he said loudly, ignoring Amara, who rushed to intervene. "You remember me, right?" Chibik hesitated. Amara reached for his hand, protective instincts flaring. But Cunnell waved her off like a fly. "I just want to say hello. I bought him some clothes." Amara glanced at the bag, designer brands she could never afford. But her pride screamed louder than poverty. "We don't need your charity," she said sharply. Ngozi chuckled, eyeing Amara like a virus. "You're still here? I thought billionaire baby mama life would have upgraded you." Kunnel's words were crueler than usual. "You know, Amara, when I left you, everyone said I made a mistake. But look at you. Still struggling. Still bitter. Still dressing like a cleaner." Her fists clenched. Neighbors watched from windows and doorways, murmuring. "And now you want to trap another man with your crocodile tears and sad story? That billionaire will dump you faster than I did." Chabik looked between them, confused. "Mummy, why is he saying that?" Kunnel smirked. "Because she knows it's true." He reached to pat the boy's head, but Amara slapped his hand away. "Leave now, or I'll scream." Kunnel's face hardened. "You think this is over? I'm not done with you." With that, he stormed off. Ngozi trailed behind, still smirking. Amara collapsed on the floor of her room afterward, shaking from anger and shame, knowing he wouldn't stop until he destroyed what little she had left. That night, Amara sat with Chabik, brushing his hair while he played with the ragged toy he always carried. "Mummy, why doesn't Daddy live with us?" he asked. Her throat closed. She'd rehearsed the answer 1,000 times, but still hadn't found the right one. "Because sometimes adults make mistakes, and Daddy made one. But that doesn't mean you're a mistake." Chabik blinked, trying to understand. "Is that why everyone laughs at you?" Amara's heart shattered into dust. She couldn't speak. She simply hugged him tighter than ever. Later that night, she wrote a prayer in her diary. "Lord, if you won't bless me, please at least protect my son. Let him grow up strong, stronger than I ever was." She closed the book and cried silently, not knowing that somewhere across town, Damien Okafor had just watched her kiss video again, for the 100th time. Damien sat in his office overlooking the Lagos skyline, but his mind remained in Mushin. His staff noticed his distraction. His personal assistant, Thomas, finally spoke up. "Boss, you've missed 3 meetings. The French investors are waiting." Damien waved him off, eyes still fixed on his tablet, where a still image of Amara filled the screen. It was a moment frozen from the kiss, her eyes wide, lips slightly parted, face full of confusion and panic. He didn't know what had happened to him that night. He only knew that every time he tried to get back to his old routine, luxury parties, casual flings, brand deals, his heart wouldn't cooperate. It kept returning to that one moment, that one woman, that one kiss. And worst of all, it hadn't felt random. It had felt inevitable. So Damien did something he hadn't done in years. He followed up. Quietly, he assigned his private security detail to check in on Amara's safety after hearing whispers of harassment. When Thomas questioned him, Damien responded coldly, "She's under my protection." But more than that, he began to involve himself personally. One morning, Amara woke to find a package on her doorstep. Inside were brand new textbooks for Chabik, school uniforms, and a voucher for paid school fees, anonymously signed. She guessed who it came from immediately. Her pride burned, but her heart melted too. Chabik was ecstatic. "Mummy, maybe my new daddy is a superhero." Amara smiled faintly, though her stomach turned with fear. She wanted to throw the package back into the street, but she couldn't deny what it meant for her son. Still, she made a mental note. She would never be anyone's pity project. Across the city, Damien was going through his own transformation. For the first time in years, he declined invitations to yacht parties and celebrity weddings. He stopped answering calls from exes and socialites. Bianca, one of his most persistent admirers, noticed the shift. "You've changed," she said during a dinner she forced herself into. "What's her name?" Damien didn't answer. But when she persisted, mocking Amara for being a ghetto Cinderella, Damien slammed his wine glass on the table and stood up. "Careful, Bianca. You're not as special as you think." Then he left, leaving her stunned. Later that night, alone in his suite, Damien stared at his reflection in the mirror. "Why her?" he whispered to himself. He didn't know the answer. All he knew was this: Amara had gotten under his skin in a way that money, sex, and status never could. Sunday morning came, and Amara tried to make it feel like a normal day. She dressed Chabik in his cleanest clothes and took him to church, avoiding eye contact with the women in her neighborhood. Some greeted her with fake smiles, others didn't bother. In the pews, she kept her head bowed, ashamed of the whispers. After service, Sister Caroline, a long-time member, approached. "My dear, you know we're praying for you," she said with a forced tone. "But remember, it's not every kiss that's a blessing. Some kisses come from the devil." The words sliced like blades. Amara smiled politely but walked away, holding her son's hand tighter. Even the house of God wasn't free of judgment. Meanwhile, Damien made an appearance at a society brunch in Ikoyi, where Lagos's elite gathered. The moment he arrived, the cameras began flashing. But as he sat, sipping champagne, the whispers started. "He's losing it," one banker whispered. "All over a waitress?" a model scoffed. "She must have something special. Jazz, maybe," another muttered. Bianca made a scene, loudly laughing with another man but throwing glances toward Damien. Then someone made the mistake of asking Damien, "So is it true? Are you marrying the Mushin maid?" The table froze. Damien smiled, leaned in, and said, "You should be careful who you mock. Sometimes the people at the bottom have more dignity than all of us combined." The table fell silent. The air shifted. For once, the Prince of Lagos didn't sound like he was playing. Word spread fast. Blogs posted, "Damien defends waitress." Social media argued. Some said it was romantic, others said he was going mad. But the biggest impact was back in Mushin. Amara's phone rang off the hook. People from her past messaged her again, pretending to care. Her former coursemate, Esther, called. "Babe, you and Damien? You must tell me everything, oh." Amara rolled her eyes and blocked her. She hated it. Hated being a trending topic. Hated that her pain was now entertainment. But somewhere inside, a small voice whispered, "Someone defended you. Someone stood up for you. Someone who didn't have to." She shook her head, dismissing the thought. She wasn't about to fall for a man just because he said something nice in public. But still, when Chabik asked, "Mummy, are we still poor?" Amara hesitated. She looked out the window and whispered, "Not in the way we used to be." Amara's peace, what little she had left, shattered the day Connell barged into her workplace. She was carrying a tray of umla and yudu for customers when he marched into the restaurant, dressed in a senator's outfit and designer shades, like he owned the place. Her heart dropped. "Amara," he bellowed, loud enough to draw attention. Heads turned. The manager stepped aside, sensing drama. Connell walked right up to her, pulled out a crumpled envelope, and shoved it into her hand. "Court papers," he sneered. "I'm filing for full custody of Chabik." Time stopped. Amara stood frozen, hands shaking, tray wobbling. She looked down at the envelope, then back at Connell's smug face. "Why?" she whispered. "Because that boy deserves better than to be raised in this slum by a woman who lets random men kiss her in public," he spat. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. She wouldn't cry in front of him. Not again. "You left us," she said. "You chose to abandon your son." Connell scoffed. "And now I've come to rescue him from the shame of being your son. Look around, Amara. You're a joke. That billionaire of yours, he'll dump you like I did. But this time, I'll make sure you don't drag my son into your mess." The words hit harder than a slap. Amara tried to hold her composure, but her knees buckled. The manager intervened, asking Connell to leave. He did, grinning like a victor. Customers whispered, phones recorded, and by evening, a clip of the scene was online titled "Drama in Lagos Restaurant. Baby Daddy Humiliates Single Mom Over Billionaire Kiss." Amara was crushed. She got home that evening broken. Her son rushed to hug her, but she sat on the floor and cried, not even caring if he saw. "Mummy, what's wrong?" he asked over and over. But how do you explain to a 6-year-old that the world sees you as unworthy of love? That even when you try to live right, you're constantly punished for surviving? The court papers stared at her from the corner of the room. Connell wasn't bluffing. He had money now, lawyers, influence. And in a system like Nigeria's, that meant everything. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She didn't want to, but there was only one person who could fight someone like Connell, And it was the man she hated most, Damien Okafor. Damien had just stepped out of a board meeting when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He usually ignored those, but something made him pause. He answered and froze. "It's me, Amara," the voice said softly. His heart skipped. She sounded exhausted, broken. "I need your help," she said. No long explanations. No small talk. Just those words. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask how. He simply replied, "Send me the address." 30 minutes later, his black Range Rover pulled up in front of her compound. The same neighbors who mocked her now stared wide-eyed as he stepped out, escorted by 2 bodyguards. He walked past them like shadows and knocked gently. When Amara opened the door, he didn't speak. He just looked at her, tired eyes, swollen lids, trembling lips, and something inside him cracked. "What did he do this time?" he asked. Amara handed him the court papers. Damien scanned them, his jaw tightening. "He's serious," he muttered. "But he's not winning this." She looked up, confused. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care?" Damien stepped closer, his voice low. "Because I started this mess. Because you don't deserve this. Because your son deserves better. And because," he stopped himself. The words felt too real, too soon. He turned away. "Just let me handle it." He left immediately, already dialing his legal team. Within an hour, top-tier family lawyers were mobilized. Meanwhile, gossip blogs were lit again. "Damien seen at waitress house. Are they getting serious?" The story spread, and soon his business partners started asking questions. His board called an emergency meeting. But Damien didn't care. Not anymore. Amara, for the first time in weeks, slept in peace. Not because the battle was over, but because she no longer felt alone. Damien's presence didn't erase the pain, but it steadied her. Chabik beamed the next morning. "Mummy, is Uncle Dammy our friend now?" She laughed, a dry, tired laugh, but it was the first real one in weeks. She sent Damien a thank you message. He replied with, "I'm not done yet." And true to his word, he wasn't. The next day, Damien made a bold move. He took Chabik and Amara out in public, to a children's bookstore in Lekki. No disguises. No hiding. Cameras followed. Paparazzi snapped. And Damien didn't flinch. Amara was hesitant, embarrassed, but Damien held her hand once and didn't let go. The world saw, and the world judged. Bianca watched the footage on her phone, a glass of red wine in hand, eyes narrowed. The once envied socialite had gone from being Damien's arm candy to a discarded memory. And now, this waitress was the talk of the country. Bianca laughed bitterly. "You'll regret humiliating me, Damien," she whispered. She had connections, reporters, social clout, and one thing Amara didn't have: power. That evening, she made a few calls. One to a journalist desperate for clicks. Another to an employee at the restaurant where Amara worked. Within 24 hours, a trap was set. The next day, just before Amara's shift, 2 bloggers pretending to be customers entered and ordered food. They recorded everything. Waited for her to trip. Waited for her to stammer. Then launched into insults. "Are you the billionaire's concubine?" one sneered. Another threw 500 Nigerian nairas on the floor. "Dance for us, waitress." Amara tried to hold back tears. One of the customers stood and pretended to slap her. "You think you're above us now? Just because a man kissed you." Staff stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene. The manager, eager to protect the restaurant's name, warned Amara not to cause drama. But the phone cameras didn't stop. Amara finally turned and left, eyes brimming. By evening, the video was viral, entitled "Waitress with Billionaire Dreams Humiliated in Public." Comments flooded in. Some laughed. Others insulted her parenting. Even Kunnel reposted it with laughing emojis. Amara locked herself in her bathroom that night and screamed. Not out of weakness, but rage. How much more humiliation could she endure? Was she cursed? Was she stupid for letting Damien close? But while the world laughed, Damien seethed. When he saw the footage, he didn't just get angry. He got dangerous. He traced the bloggers within an hour and threatened them with legal action. Then he called Bianca. She answered sweetly. Hello, stranger. Damien's voice was ice. Touch her again, and I'll bury you socially. Don't test me. Bianca laughed, pretending not to care. But her voice trembled when she hung up. Damien then called Amara. Are you okay? He asked. She didn't answer for a long time, then finally whispered, They will never let me live. Damien replied, Then let's make sure they choke watching your eyes. She didn't reply, but that night, Amara took out her old accounting textbooks, the ones she had abandoned when she got pregnant. Maybe it was time to finish what life tried to take from her. Maybe it was time to fight back. The public humiliation at the restaurant left Amara emotionally bruised, but not broken. She returned home that night and sat in the dark, listening to the slow hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional rumble of a passing danfo outside. She stared at the blank wall in front of her and remembered her mother's voice, years ago, whispering, You're stronger than any storm that tries to swallow you. She had almost forgotten that strength. Life had buried it under years of shame, single motherhood, abandoned dreams, and men who used her pain as a punchline. But something about the look on Damien's face when he called her, angry, protective, serious, sparked a fire in her chest. Maybe she couldn't control the rumors. Maybe she couldn't stop people from laughing. But she could control how she responded. And she was done being a victim. The next day, she walked into the restaurant with her shoulders back and head high. The staff paused. Her manager, who had once threatened to fire her, shifted uncomfortably. Amara, let's not bring more drama today, he said, pretending to be neutral. She met his eyes calmly. I'm here to work. If you want to fire me, do it. But I won't be insulted again. Her voice didn't shake. She picked up her tray and got to work. The customers who had taunted her last time weren't there, but their shadows lingered in every whisper, every phone camera half raised. Still, she didn't flinch. She moved table to table with silent grace. Not once did she stop to explain, defend, or lower her gaze. Even when a woman laughed and said, a billionaire. With that one, Amara kept walking. It hurt, but she endured. Later that evening, she got a message from Damien. Are you okay? She didn't reply immediately, not because she was angry, but because she needed to prove something to herself. She stared at her cracked mirror for a long time that night, then pulled out her old textbooks again. She'd once been top of her class in accounting. Then life happened. Pregnancy, abandonment, shame. But now she was remembering who she used to be. She signed up for an online weekend accounting course with her last savings. She didn't tell anyone, not even Damien. If she was going to stand tall in this world, it wouldn't be because of a man's kiss. It would be because she reclaimed the woman life had stolen from her. One Saturday morning, Damien pulled up in front of Amara's compound in a quiet black SUV. He wasn't alone this time. He brought coloring books, a bicycle, and a small puppy. Not expensive gifts, nothing that screamed bribe. Just thoughtful gestures. Chabik screamed in delight. Uncle Dammy, he yelled, running into his arms. Amara, watching from the window, felt her chest tighten. Damien, once a stranger who turned her life upside down, was now the only man who had treated her son with softness and consistency. She stepped outside slowly, wiping her hands on her wrapper. What are you doing here? She asked. Damien didn't answer immediately. He just bent down to Chabik's level and said, I came to see my friend. Then he looked up at Amara, eyes steady, and his mom. The three of them spent the day together, first at a quiet eatery, then at a small art center where Chabik painted a picture of a superhero daddy with a red car. Damien laughed and said, Where's my cape? Chabik replied seriously, You don't need a cape. You already protect people. Amara didn't say much. She just watched, studied, listened, and something inside her softened. That night, when Damien dropped them off, Chabik held his hand tightly and asked, Can I call you Daddy? Damien froze. The air grew heavy. Amara stepped in quickly, gently. No, baby, you can call him Uncle Dammy. But the look in Damien's eyes said everything. He knelt beside the boy. I'm not your daddy, but I'll always show up for you. I promise. And for once, Amara saw not a billionaire, but a man stripped of ego, desperately wanting to belong somewhere. Inside, after Chibik had gone to bed, Amara sat with Damien in silence. The lights were off. Only the street lamps outside cast faint orange glows through the curtain. She finally whispered, "Why are you really here?" Damien stared ahead, then turned to her. "Because I'm tired of pretending," he said. "I've spent my life building empires and sleeping with people I didn't even like. He paused, "you make me feel like I don't have to prove anything." Amara shook her head, half laughing, half crying. "I'm a mess, Damien. I don't belong in your world." He touched her hand. "Maybe I don't belong in mine either." She didn't reply, but she didn't pull her hand away either. The boardroom of Okafor Tech buzzed with tension. Executives shuffled papers. Legal advisors exchanged nervous glances. At the head of the table, Damien sat calmly, hands folded. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. "Mr. Okafor, with all due respect, your recent media activity is becoming a liability. Investors are nervous. The public perception of you is shifting." Another board member, a stiff, older man, added, "A billionaire dating a Mushin waitress? Is this a PR stunt? Or have you lost control?" Damien looked around the room, scanning each face. These were the same people who praised him for his ruthlessness, who never questioned his womanizing ways until now. But now that he had chosen a woman who wasn't polished or rich, they wanted explanations. He stood slowly and walked toward the window. Lagos bustled outside, traffic, street vendors, life in motion. He turned back and spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You've never questioned the women I've slept with. You never asked about the models, actresses, or daughters of governors. But the moment I show respect to a woman who works hard, raises a child alone, and still walks with dignity, you panic." A stunned silence followed. "If this company's reputation hinges on my ability to maintain a lie, then maybe it's not worth saving." He ended the meeting early, leaving jaws dropped. His lawyer rushed after him. "You could lose your chairmanship." Damien replied coolly, "Then I'll build another empire. But I won't let men in suits tell me who I can love." That night, he showed up at Amara's door again. She was surprised. "I thought you'd be in a board meeting." Damien shrugged. "I was. But I'm done being a puppet." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. She opened it, expecting cash. But inside was a certificate. Chibik's school tuition paid in full for the next 5 years. Amara's eyes filled. "Why?" she asked. Damien smiled, eyes soft. "Because you shouldn't have to beg to give your son the future he deserves." Amara held the paper to her chest. "You'll lose everything for me," she whispered. Damien stepped closer. "Then it's worth it." For the first time, Amara didn't resist when he reached for her hand. For the first time, she let herself hope. Courtroom 7 of the Lagos State Family Court was packed. Press hovered outside like vultures, and inside, murmurs filled the space as Amara stood silently beside her lawyer, Barrister Chinello, a calm, focused woman known for defending vulnerable mothers. On the other side of the aisle sat Kunnel, suited, smug, flanked by a pompous lawyer Ngozi, who smirked like she was watching an amusing play. Kunnel's argument was simple. Amara is unstable. She's poor. She's exposed our child to a dangerous lifestyle by getting involved with a celebrity. She works long hours, has no proper home environment, and is not morally fit to raise Chibik. He painted himself as reformed, a financially stable father trying to rescue his child from a life of scandal and social ridicule. Amara sat frozen as her name was dragged through the mud. The judge, a stern woman in her late 50s, watched closely, occasionally silencing the courtroom. When Barrister Chinello rose, her defense wasn't loud, but surgical. She presented documents proving Kunnel's abandonment, hospital records showing Amara gave birth alone, bank statements showing no child support ever paid, and sworn testimonies from neighbors and teachers confirming that Chibik was being raised with love, discipline, and joy. Then Chinello added something unexpected, a surprise witness. Damien Okafor entered the courtroom to a wave of gasps. He took the stand, stating under oath that not only did Amara never seek his financial help, but she resisted it. She's the most dignified woman I've met, he said. I support her, because I believe she's already doing the impossible with nothing. I only offered to lighten the load. The courtroom was stunned. The judge nodded silently and called for recess. Amara sat alone, head bowed, heart pounding. Chabik sat with a court child supervisor in the hallway. When she approached, he ran into her arms. Are they taking me away? He asked. Amara didn't answer. She just held him tightly, whispering over and over, no one will ever take you from me. In a far corner of the hallway, Kunal watched them. His jaw tightened, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. He had underestimated the woman he once discarded. Amara wasn't just surviving anymore, she was fighting back. The trial resumed the following week. As tension mounted, Kunal's team attempted one final strike, presenting gossip blog headlines and video clips of Amara being humiliated at her workplace. This is not the kind of environment a child should be raised in, his lawyer sneered. But Barrister Chinello countered again with quiet confidence. Being mocked doesn't mean being unfit, she said. What we see in these videos is a woman who kept her head high, who didn't fight back, who walked away with dignity while others threw stones. If this woman is guilty of anything, it's of surviving hardship with strength. The courtroom shifted. Murmurs rose. The judge watched Damien closely. Do you intend to marry Ms. Amara? She asked suddenly. Silence fell. Damien stood, eyes on the judge. Not yet. But I hope to one day, he said, voice firm. Amara's breath caught. The judge nodded and continued. But what happened next was unplanned and devastating. Bianca, in a last-minute move, leaked a private audio recording of Amara in her bathroom during a breakdown, where she cried and said, maybe I really am not enough. The recording was played during a break and quickly went viral. Blogs titled it, Damien's woman admits she's unfit. The courtroom buzzed with fresh scandal. Amara, hearing the clip from someone's phone, broke down in the court restroom. The one thing she feared most had happened. Her weakness had become public. But Damien came to her, pushed through the crowd, and pulled her into his arms. Let them talk, he whispered. You're still standing, and that's what makes you better than all of them. Barrister Chinello filed a defamation motion against the unknown leaker. The court reopened. In a shocking turn, the judge silenced all gossip-based evidence. This court is not a place for tabloids, she said. It is a place for truth. She postponed final judgment to review all custody details personally, away from press and pressure. As a crowd exited the courtroom, Damien held Amara's hand in public for the first time. No hiding, no fear. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but he didn't let go. Amara looked up at him and said, through tears, why do you believe in me? Damien answered, because you're the first woman who never needed me to survive, and that's exactly why I want to stay. Weeks passed. Amara returned to work, now balancing shifts and online accounting classes in secret. Despite the court dragging on, her spirit was stronger. The gossip didn't stop, but she learned to walk through it with grace. Then, the unexpected happened. Damien invited her and Chabik to attend his company's annual tech gala as his guest. Amara refused at first. I can't go to another rich people's event, she said, haunted by the memory of the first kiss. But Damien gently insisted. You won't be alone this time. Eventually, she agreed, borrowing a simple long gown from a friend and using her last money to braid her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, You are not small. You are not ashamed. The event was held at the prestigious Eco Atlantic Convention Center. Security ushered them in like royalty. Gasps followed them as they entered, Amara, radiant in confidence, Damien by her side, and Chabik beaming with pride. Bianca was there, of course, dressed to kill, clinging to another billionaire. But her face fell when she saw them. Reporters swarmed, but Damien held Amara's waist firmly, leading her into the spotlight. During his speech, Damien took the mic and shocked the entire room. Tonight, I'd like to thank someone not for their business skills, but for their strength. This woman taught me what dignity looks like. Her name is Amara. She's the reason I still believe in humanity. The hall was dead silent. Then applause. Real applause. Respect. Bianca stormed out. Cunnel, who had sneaked in with a press pass to monitor the event, watched from the shadows, face sour, lips clenched. The woman he'd discarded had risen in front of his eyes. Not through seduction, not through scandal, but through unshakable grace. When the event ended, Amara stepped outside and breathed in deeply. For the first time, people looked at her and didn't laugh. They nodded, smiled. Some even asked for photos. She looked at Damien, heart full, and whispered, "They'll come for us again." Damien replied, "Then we'll face them again. Together." As they drove home in silence, Chabik fell asleep in the back seat, holding Amara's hand. She looked at his peaceful face and knew, no matter how this ended, she had already won something priceless. Days after the gala, Lagos was still buzzing with debates, blog posts, and talk show segments about Damien and the waitress. Public opinion had begun to shift. The same people who once mocked Amara now discussed her grace under fire. Damien's PR team warned him, "This love story is making you look too emotional. Investors are nervous. The board is calling again." But Damien no longer cared about boardrooms or billionaire optics. He cared about the woman who had stood alone for too long. That same week, he told his team to cancel all his media appearances. Instead, he took a quiet trip to Mushin, not with his bodyguards this time, but alone. And this time, he didn't arrive with a gift or a check. He arrived with a question. Amara was in her compound yard, rinsing clothes in a plastic bowl, wearing a faded wrapper, face bare. When Damien stepped in, her eyes widened. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, unsure if it was warning or fear. But he walked forward and knelt down in front of her, not with a ring, not with rehearsed poetry, but with a deep, quiet sincerity. "You told me once I couldn't buy your dignity. And you were right. But this isn't about money. This is about choice. My choice. I choose you, Amara." He reached into his pocket and pulled out not a diamond, but her son's hand-drawn picture of the three of them holding hands. "I don't want a woman who polishes my image. I want the woman who reminds me who I really am." Amara's breath caught in her throat. She didn't respond immediately. Her life had taught her to doubt joy, to question kindness, to expect betrayal. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see charity. She saw need. Not the kind men use to manipulate, but the kind only found in people desperate for real connection. She stepped forward, pulled him to his feet, and whispered, "I'm not perfect." Damien smiled. "Neither am I." And there, in a quiet backyard where water dripped from laundry lines and Danfo horns echoed faintly in the distance, a billionaire and a single mother held each other. No press, no cameras, just honesty, and maybe, for the first time in both their lives, peace. 2 weeks later, the court ruled in favor of Amara. The judge's verdict was final. Full custody awarded to the mother. Cunnel's appeal was denied. His lies and absence were weighed against Amara's consistent sacrifice and Chabik's own spoken desire to stay with his mother. Outside the courthouse, reporters expected a dramatic celebration, but Amara simply thanked the judge and walked out holding her son's hand. That was all she ever wanted, to keep her child safe. Cunnel, red-eyed and bitter, tried to confront her one last time in the parking lot. "You think this is over?" he hissed. Amara turned to him, calm and composed. "It was over the day you left me in that hospital. I just didn't know it yet." Then she walked away, not looking back. Later that month, Amara and Damien married, but not in a televised wedding. No luxury venue, no paparazzi. Just a small ceremony in a garden behind a community church. Amara wore a simple white dress she designed herself. Damien wore a cream agbada with humble embroidery. Chabik walked them both down the aisle. Tears rolled down the faces of the few friends who came, not because of the flowers or the vows, but because of the journey. The woman once mocked as just a waitress had found something more valuable than status. She found someone who saw her not for what she lacked, but for what she survived. During the reception, when asked why he chose her, Damien simply said, "Because love isn't about where you start. It's about who's still standing with you at the end." Months later, Amara opened a small accounting consultancy. She named it Grace and Grit. Clients started coming in. Slowly, her name began to mean something outside of gossip blogs. She was no longer the woman kissed at a gala. She was Amara, mother, survivor, entrepreneur, and wife. Damien remained supportive, but gave her space to grow. He wasn't her savior. He was her partner. Chabik flourished, now top of his class, finally surrounded by love, peace, and the sense that his life mattered. As for Kunal and Bianca, their names faded from relevance. No press, no legacy, just silence. And, in the end, that was the best revenge. Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel Tochi Stories for more.